My name is Amy. I'm a wellbeing practitioner in the NHS. If you're new here, I'm sharing how I'm trying to find balance as I navigate going from one child to two, managing my garden and mental health, and moving our family to Sweden. If any of that sounds interesting to you, do stick around, like and subscribe. So, if you've been around here for the last few months since I started this channel, you will realise that we haven't done much on that last element of my channel, moving our family to Sweden. The process for that is kind of a bit long. So for the month of October, we've just been trialling life in Sweden to see if it is what we really want. A lot of people ask us, they go, oh, why Sweden? What made you pick Sweden? And we have friends that have moved here and friends who live here, who grew up here. But I think we also wanted to know that we wanted it for ourselves. So my husband grew up in and around Europe. He wanted a lifestyle that comes from living in Europe and being able to travel around Europe and things for our sons. And we just sort of generally like the Swedish culture and lifestyle. So yeah, we've been here for 3 weeks now doing that trial. So just before we kind of jump into that topic, I just want to update you on my garden. Before we left, I got my garden tidied away and my garlic planted. I'm doing a whole bed of garlic this year and I'm testing out some variables. I actually do square foot gardening, which is why I'm using this green square tool that you can see here. I had saved my largest garlic cloves from last year's harvest and I stored them in a cotton bag so that they would be able to breathe, they wouldn't go mouldy. That's really important. Now, I had heard that the more space you give garlic, the bigger bulbs you'll get. And last year I actually planted them 9 per square foot and I did half a bed. So I've got a 4x4, so I did 8 squares, 9 times 8, that is 81 cloves I put in the ground. And I guess thinking about it in that respect, I didn't get a huge harvest. I have heard on various forums that planting 4 per square foot will result in bigger bulbs. So for the majority of these bulbs, I'm planting them 4 per square foot. And just because I had some smaller cloves, I've done 1 square where I've done 9 per square foot. And I don't know if you saw this clip from Grow Veg YouTube channel, great YouTube channel. I've learnt so much about gardening from them, about this guy that grows ginormous veg. And I was looking at his huge bulbs of garlic and he said basically each year you just replant the same cloves and they just get bigger and bigger. His year 5 bulbs were massive. So that's also something I'm going to experiment with. I mentioned in my seed saving video that I deliberately spent money on my first year cloves because I wanted a soft net variety that would give me garlic scapes as well. I really like efficiency in the garden, and if I can have a plant that gives me multiple crops for free, I'll do it. And that's why I plant a lot of beetroot instead of, say, Swiss chard or spinach. Partly because I prefer the flavour, but also over its growing cycle, it gives me salad greens, it gives me a spinach replacement, and it gives me the beetroot itself. So I get 3 harvests from that. So back to the main topic of this video. We are currently in Sweden doing a test of life here, and we actually have some key questions that we needed answering before we decided to make the leap. So the first is, can we create a community here? Now we do have friends here, but it's really important to us that we're not just like limpets, like tagging on and taking their friends. We'd like to see if we can form our own community. So test 1, what can we get involved with whilst we're here to try and build a bit of community? So firstly, we've been going to Öppna förskola, which is like an open nursery for kids up to the age of 6, where parents and children go together. And I found meeting other parents really helpful for practicing my Swedish. As well as this, we went to church at the weekend, and that was just really lovely to be welcomed and to meet other people. And we've also been put in touch with some acquaintances of our friends. We actually had fika with them Sunday before last, and that was really lovely. They're an Australian couple. I think they moved about 7 years ago, and they've just been a wellspring of advice. They've been so helpful. So that's been really nice, and I think it's kind of answered that question of like, oh yeah, I think we probably could find some community here. So question number 2, can we learn Swedish? We've actively been learning Swedish with Listen and Learn, so we have a tutor, Åsa. We did have a different tutor previously, but our learning styles didn't quite match up because of mine and Tim's neurodivergent brains. But our current tutor has been really helpful. She gives us a lot of time to process the homework, so she sends it like a couple of days after our lesson, and then we kind of got time between that and the next lesson to practice it, to process it, and to ask questions. As well as that, we've just been practicing as much as possible our Swedish when we go out and about, especially to öppna förskola. The area that I've struggled more so is like when we've gone to the supermarket and they've said something to me and I'm just like, what? I have literally no idea what you just said. But I did order salami in Swedish from the deli counter, so I'm dead proud of myself that I didn't just get it from the shelf, because I think it is important. So yeah, I have struggled more there. I felt like when I've gone to öppna förskola and practiced my Swedish with other parents, there's been this kind of understanding about the fact that we are English. And the other nice thing, I think it's both a nice thing and a bit of an annoyance, because everyone speaks English here. And you can get away with speaking English, but you will fit in better in society if you can speak Swedish and if you can integrate properly. The Swedish immigration, they want people to integrate, so they have actual courses, free courses, Swedish for immigrants. So that's nice as well. Yeah, and I think if we move, we'll sort of carry on our Swedish learning with the Swedish for immigrant courses rather than with our Listen and Learn tutors. We just wanted to get a head start on learning Swedish, because I know that I actually do struggle with learning new languages and understanding, because I have auditory processing disorder. It takes me longer to figure out what people are saying. Now, with English, I already know the language well enough that it takes me less time to process what people have said. But when it's a new language, I'm there like literally trying to figure out, I'm like, okay, so you said this and that means that and that means that. And I think you said this, but is that what you said? And so that's actually quite difficult. But I think it is possible. And our Swedish tutor, she said that our language and our accent has improved a lot since we first started. And, she speaks to us in Swedish a lot, so we're kind of getting more understanding. She will clarify for us in English, if we need that. But yeah, so in the process of learning Swedish. Now, I will say, you don't have to know Swedish to move here. And a friend of ours who moved over with his wife, so his wife's Swedish, and they moved over about 5 years ago. It must have been about 5 years ago, because he did the photos at our wedding and then they moved after that. So and we've been married about 5 years. So about 5 years ago, they moved over, and he only just posted recently, I think it was a few months back, that he'd passed his level 1 certificate in Swedish, and he said, I can speak Swedish as well as a toddler now, which did make me laugh. But, I think there's time. But, yeah, because everyone speaks English, it's very easy to be lazy with learning Swedish. We're trying to not do that. So, question 3, does the lifestyle suit us? I think yes. Swedes are maybe a tiny bit more reserved than English people, but as a neurodivergent person myself, I'm pretty much the same. It works for me. I don't feel like I'm offending anyone if I don't want to talk to them. That sounds really bad. That said, most of the parents that I've been talking to at öppna förskola have been quite friendly. They've let me speak to them in terrible Swedish. And I don't think we're at the stage where I would swap numbers or have fika with them just yet. We're probably at least a year off that level of relationship. Swedes tend to have slower growing relationships. And a lot of people tend to still have the same friends that they had at school. And that was a piece of advice that our friends who moved over 5 years ago said was, actually, it's hard to break into a circle of friends in Sweden because a lot of people do just have their old school friends and they've got these little groups, and it's hard to kind of break into and become part of that group. So yeah, I think maybe that's something to consider. So the other thing I would say is like lifestyle. One thing that I've noticed is that family life is really, really well supported here. Even for people who are not yet citizens, if you have a residence permit, you can access the same rights as other parents, including paid parental leave, which you can use up until your child is 11 years old. As well as this, you have vabben, which are days that you can take off if your child is sick and you need to look after them. And you get 121 days of that a year. They even have a slang term for February called Vabuary, because so many kids get sick during that month that a lot of parents would just be off caring for them. Kids don't go to formal school here until they're 6 years old, but there is heavily subsidised childcare from the age of 1 so that parents can go back to work. And that subsidy means you pay pretty much like a token amount. It's about £90 a month, which, since we pay double that weekly for 3 days with our free 30 hours, yeah, that's amazing to me. There's also, as I mentioned, Öppna förskola, which is like nursery you can go to with your child. You hang out together, you can meet other parents. That's been really lovely. Now, in terms of lifestyle, there are some things to be really mindful of. The winters here are really dark and cold, and it happens really quickly. I noticed that the days get shorter. So at the start of October when we arrived, there was still enough light in the evening to go for a walk. We didn't have to wear hats and gloves. And a week later, that was gone. The nights were much longer. It was getting dark quite early and didn't get light until a bit later. And if you don't respond properly to it, the dark can feel really quite oppressive. And a lot of Swedes will have small lamps in their window that they'll keep on all night to keep the dark at bay. And they'll make a thing of finding joy in the winter things like cosy nights, candles, sitting around a fire. They'll get out into the fresh air in the morning. Apparently the worst months are October, so we've come at a great time really, because it's really wet. And then March again, it's wet and slushy. But we've visited in deep winter in January and it was absolutely beautiful. And yeah, we just really enjoyed it. So we know that we don't mind a Swedish winter. If you can find a house that has a sauna, even better, because then you can kind of come in and warm up from the cold. Now, there are some other typical Swedish things that we quite enjoy, like foraging for chanterelle. So we fit right in that respect. We're out in the Swedish forest over in Norra. Our friends have sent us chanterelle picking. And I don't know if this is the right one, but it's got a hollow stem, it's got a little divot here, it's nice and yellow, and it's got false gills, so they're not real gills, but they're kind of like folds. So I think that's the right one. We shall see. We're waiting for a text back from our friends to see if it's the right one. Hollow stem, divot in the top, false gills, check, check, check. And growing in a cluster, which always helps. My husband has been really enjoying lördagsgodis, which is a thing where Swedish people don't get to eat candy all week, but they get Saturday goodies. That was actually to help with dental health, but yeah, it's become part of the culture. Fika is another thing, which is getting together with friends or family and having hot drinks and baked goods together and just chatting. And what I've noticed is there's a lot less just sitting staring at screens together here. Like, they do have fredagsmys, which is like chilling out with the family in your comfy clothes, and you might watch a film. Fridays are also when a lot of Swedes will have Mexican food, so it's actually called Taco Friday, and it's such a big thing that if you go to the supermarket, there is a whole aisle where you can buy all of your taco supplies. So that's the first 3 questions, and I think so far we're answering, yeah, we like the lifestyles, it suits us. Yes, we can learn Swedish, it might take a bit of time. We will cope because a lot of people speak English. And yes, we can build community. So, more importantly, can we afford it? So, I will talk in a moment about what our career options are. But basically, I would be self-employed. To move here on a self-employed visa, you have to prove that you can support yourself and your family for 2 years. So they want you to have a minimum of 200,000 krona for you, 100,000 krona for your spouse, and 50,000 krona for each child that you bring along. Now, that sounds like a lot of money. In UK money, you need at least £31,000 to make the move, which is still quite a lot of money. The other thing that you need is you need to earn a minimum of 80% of the median salary, which this year was set at 356,160 krona per year, and that's equivalent to about £28,316. Now, I will say housing here is much cheaper. Obviously, it's not in the cities like Stockholm or Örebro, but certainly just 20 minutes, 30 minutes north, the prices go down significantly. So if we sell our house in the UK, we could easily buy a place without a mortgage, and that means that our overall living costs for both childcare and housing will be significantly lower. And considering we pay the most for childcare and housing in the UK, like our cost of living will go down significantly, which is a good thing because Swedish taxes are significantly higher than in the UK. They're at least 10% higher than anywhere in Europe. So you actually pay between 29 and 35% tax, depending on which municipality you're in. And then there's also an extra 20% on any wages above a certain threshold. So it's just like the equivalent of the high income tax charge. And then the other thing is there is a tax-free allowance, but that allowance actually changes depending on how much you earn. And in this way, very equitable, because it starts at a minimum, it goes up the more that you earn until a point where it starts to go down again, which means that you're actually benefiting from getting a higher paid job. So if I got a higher paid job, I could have 45,000 krona tax-free, whereas someone who's earning less than me wouldn't get 45,000 krona tax-free. They would get like 25,000 krona tax-free. So it's closer to a percentage. But then after a certain point, that would start going down again. The other thing we should need to consider is that food prices are higher. What I noticed recently on our last food shop was actually between the UK inflation hitting grocery shopping, I've noticed that the prices are pretty much the same, actually. Salaries are agreed collectively through unions, so it's important to remember that although the salaries are lower, the backdrop to that is that there's a very strong social safety net, so you don't really need as much income to still be doing well in terms of work-life balance and taking care of your needs. So, yes, we think we probably will be able to afford it if we sell our house in the UK, but we'll kind of talk more about that at a future date. So, last question, what are our work options for moving here? I'd already done a lot of research and on the relicensing program. So I'm a psychologist, and to become a psychologist in Sweden, there is a 5-year course that you do to become licensed here. And you can have your qualifications assessed and you can be licensed here, but in order to get a license, you need to be able to speak Swedish to excellent level, like C1 level. If anyone who knows language tests knows that's like the highest level. Because you're working in a medical situation, you need to be able to understand Swedish and the nuances of it. And so I realised that was going to be an incredibly difficult and long process, and our visas might have timed out before I could get everything sorted. So I've looked into alternative careers. I've actually started a coaching and mentoring course. Now, if you don't know what the psychological wellbeing practitioner role is, it's actually closer to a coach than a therapist. It's someone who coaches you through a psychological intervention, evidence-based. I also started out my career as a youth and community worker, and again, that kind of helping relationship is all about coaching and mentoring young people on their journey through life. So I've always been developing these skills as a coach, as a mentor, as a therapist, as someone who helps people figure stuff out for themselves and make progress in life. So that kind of self-employment actually feels relatively safe because I have nearly 18 years of experience doing that kind of work. The course that I've chosen is also accredited by the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, and there's a base in Sweden, so that's the main reason I picked that course so that I could transfer that over pretty quickly and have that accreditation that works in Sweden as well as the UK. I'm also planning to complete a specialist qualification in coaching for autism and ADHD, just because that's my special interest. Just a quick note, I am currently looking for practice clients for the course. So if you are interested in some free coaching, or you know someone else who is, do message me. I'll say now that it's for over 18s, just because that's what the course needs, but it can be for any topic you like, though the course does ask that the topic is generally work related. But that could be anything about work. It could be managing stress, a specific project that you need support with, team dynamics, career progression, or performance issues and just difficulty like organising your workload. So yeah, that's something that I've been working on. Is I've been looking into how easy it is to set up a business here. And whilst there are some complexities, I was actually introduced to a friend of a friend who has experience in setting up her own business here. And she put me in touch with a very responsive accountant. I literally messaged in the morning. I had a message back an hour later saying, yep, this is how much it would cost to help you get set up here on the accounting side of things. And then we could look at prices for ongoing stuff later. So that was really helpful. And then there's also a lot of guidance on the Verksamt.se website. It literally talks you through the process and tells you what you need for each step of the process. So that's given me a lot of confidence. I have put a bit of a business plan together just so that I can start the ball rolling on that. So that covers my career. But what about Tim? Well, the whole conversation about moving to Sweden became a real possibility when one of Tim's colleagues moved to the Nordic branch of their company. Now, it's slightly different because that individual was already an EU citizen and had the right to live and work in any European country. Tim would need to have a better reason for his visa, but he has put some feelers out. It's a potential. And we've been doing this month, and when we get back, he plans to formally ask his work about it. So, where are we now? Well, I'd like to say yes, we'd like to move here, but we still have another week here. I think we've had a lot of successes and offers of support for getting over here. Next steps are for me to finish my coaching course. I need to apply for a visa and get started setting up my business plans. I do have plenty of time though, because I have to return to work in the UK for a bit longer than I'd intended to sort out some financial issues that happened with my maternity leave. And we also need to think about selling our house, although concerned family members have suggested that we could switch to an interest-only mortgage and rent out here for a bit whilst we're getting set up. I mean, the idea of it does frustrate me a little, but it's probably a good idea. It's a bit safer than selling our house in the UK. But yeah, it means house buying gets put off for a little while, which is a shame because I quite like house buying. We did go and view a property and we were kind of going, if this house was in a different area, yes, but the area that it was in we weren't too happy about because there was a factory just up the road and we were like, maybe not. That's our Swedish journey so far. It's been lovely chatting to you today about those plans, and I'll see you in the next one. Hej då!